The morning sun cast long shadows across the courtyard of St. James's Palace, as Prince William adjusted his navy blazer for the third time. His fingers drummed against his thigh, a nervous habit he had carried since childhood. Today was different from the countless royal engagements he had attended. Today, he and Catherine would be visiting the children's ward at Great Ormond Street Hospital, but this visit held special meaning that went beyond their official duties. Catherine, the Duchess of Cambridge, stood beside him reviewing the briefing notes one final time. Her auburn hair caught the light as she looked up at her husband with those expressive eyes that had captivated the world. She could sense his nervousness, though to anyone else, William appeared perfectly composed. After years of marriage, she had learned to read the subtle signs of his emotions. "Remember what we discussed," Catherine said softly, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "This isn't about us today. It's about them." William nodded, his jaw relaxing slightly. The them Catherine referenced were the 23 children currently receiving treatment for various serious conditions at one of London's most prestigious pediatric hospitals. Among them was 8-year-old Emma Thompson, whose story had reached the royal couple through a series of events that seemed orchestrated by fate itself. 3 weeks earlier, Emma's mother, Sarah Thompson, had written a letter, not to the royal family, but to her sister living in Australia. In that letter, she had poured out her heart about her daughter's battle with leukemia, the countless hospital visits, the financial strain, and most heartbreakingly, Emma's repeated question about whether the princess from her favorite fairy tale books would ever visit sick children like her. Sarah's sister, moved by the letter, had shared it on social media with a simple caption, "Sometimes children ask questions that break your heart." The post had been shared by friends, then friends of friends, until it reached someone who worked in media relations for several charities. That person had connections to royal staff members, and within days, the letter had found its way to Catherine's personal secretary. What happened next was unusual, even by royal standards. Instead of the typical formal response or a standard charitable appearance, Catherine had personally called Sarah Thompson. The conversation lasted nearly an hour, with Catherine asking detailed questions about Emma's interests, her treatment schedule, and what might bring her the most joy during this difficult time. Now, as their convoy approached the hospital, William could see the small crowd that had gathered despite attempts to keep the visit low-key. News had leaked, as it often did, but surprisingly, the media presence was minimal. Someone had made calls, pulled strings, ensuring that this day would be about the children, not the cameras. The hospital's chief executive, Dr. Margaret Hartwell, greeted them at the entrance. She had worked with many celebrities and dignitaries over her 30-year career, but something about this particular visit felt different. The usual entourage was smaller, the schedule more flexible, and both William and Catherine had specifically requested extra time with each child rather than the typical brief walkthrough. "Your Royal Highnesses, thank you for coming," Dr. Hartwell said, leading them through the bright, cheerfully decorated corridors. "The children are absolutely thrilled. Some of them have been awake since dawn, too excited to sleep." As they walked, Catherine noticed the details that others might miss. The way the afternoon light filtered through specially designed windows to create rainbow patterns on the walls. The subtle aromatherapy scents meant to calm anxious young patients. The artwork created by former patients that lined the hallways, each piece telling a story of hope and resilience. Their first stop was the playroom, where a group of children ranging in age from 4 to 12 were engaged in various activities. The moment William and Catherine entered, the room fell silent. Not the uncomfortable silence of intimidation, but the breathless quiet of dreams potentially coming true. Little Marcus, age 6 and bald from chemotherapy treatments, was the first to speak. "Are you really a prince?" he asked William with the directness that only children possess. William knelt down to Marcus's eye level, his formal posture melting away. "I am," he replied seriously. "But more importantly, I hear you're a superhero. Your nurses told me you have special powers that help you be brave during your treatments." Marcus's eyes widened with delight. "I do. I can make myself invisible when I'm scared, and I have laser vision that fights the bad cells in my blood." "That's incredible," William said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. "I wish I had powers like that." Catherine, meanwhile, had gravitated toward a quiet corner, where Emma Thompson sat with her sketchpad. The little girl was drawing what appeared to be a castle, complete with turrets and flags. Her movements were careful and deliberate, despite the IV tube attached to her small hand. "That's a beautiful castle," Catherine observed, settling into a child-sized chair beside Emma. "Tell me about it." Emma looked up, her eyes widening as she recognized the woman from the photographs her mother had shown her. "It's where sick children go to get better," Emma explained. "The princess there has magic medicine, and she reads stories to help people feel less scared." Catherine felt her throat tighten with emotion, but her voice remained steady. "What kind of stories does she read?" "Happy ones," Emma replied without hesitation. "Stories where everyone gets better and goes home to play with their families again." For the next 20 minutes, Catherine listened as Emma described her imaginary healing castle in detail. Every tower had a purpose. Every room was designed to comfort frightened children. In Emma's 8-year-old mind, she had created a perfect world where illness was temporary and hope was permanent. Meanwhile, William found himself engaged in an animated conversation with a group of teenagers who were comparing their various medical devices to robot parts. 15-year-old James proudly showed off his prosthetic leg, which he had decorated with stickers from his favorite video games. "The doctors say I'll be able to run again soon," James explained. "Maybe not as fast as before the accident, but fast enough to play football with my mates." "What position do you play?" William asked, genuinely curious. "Midfielder. I was team captain before." James's voice trailed off, but then he straightened his shoulders. "I will be again. Just have to retrain my muscles to work with this new leg." The determination in James's voice reminded William of his own military training. The way soldiers adapted and overcame challenges that would defeat others. These children possessed that same warrior spirit, fighting battles that would test the strongest adults. As the afternoon progressed, something remarkable began to happen. The formal boundaries that typically existed during royal visits dissolved completely. William found himself sitting cross-legged on the floor, helping a 7-year-old named Sophie build a castle out of blocks. Catherine was braiding the hair of a 10-year-old girl named Amelia, listening intently as the child described her collection of stuffed animals, each named after a different country she hoped to visit someday. Dr. P. Woles, Hartwell, watching from the doorway, later told colleagues that she had never seen anything like it. "They weren't performing royal duties," she explained. "They were just being present, really present with these children." The turning point came when Emma shyly approached Catherine with her sketch pad. "Would you like to see my other drawings?" she asked. Catherine nodded eagerly, and Emma flipped through pages of artwork that told the story of her illness through a child's eyes. There were pictures of doctors with kind faces, nurses with superhero capes, and family members with worried expressions that gradually became smiling ones as the pages progressed. "This one is my favorite," Emma said, stopping at a drawing of a little girl with no hair holding hands with a woman in a blue dress. "It's me and the princess from my dreams. She visits me when I'm scared, and she tells me that being brave doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you do what you need to do even when you are afraid." Catherine studied the drawing carefully, noting how Emma had captured not just the physical details, but the emotional connection between the two figures. "Emma, would you mind if I kept this drawing? I'd like to put it somewhere special where I can see it every day." Emma's face lit up with joy. "Really? You want to keep my drawing?" "Very much," Catherine replied. "It will remind me to be brave when I'm scared, too." It was then that William approached, having overheard the conversation. He knelt beside Emma's chair and spoke quietly. "Emma, Catherine and I were wondering if you might help us with something very important." Emma nodded eagerly, her eyes wide with curiosity. "We visit many places and meet many people," William continued. "Sometimes we meet other children who are going through what you're going through. Would you be willing to let us share your story and your drawings with them? I think your ideas about the healing castle might help other kids feel less scared." Emma looked from William to Catherine and back again, processing this enormous request. Finally, she nodded solemnly. "If it helps other kids not be scared, then yes. But can you tell them that it's okay to be scared sometimes? Being brave doesn't mean you're never scared." Catherine felt tears prick at her eyes as she realized that this 8-year-old child had just articulated something profound about courage that many adults never understood. "We'll make sure they know that, Emma. Thank you for being so wise and so generous." As their visit continued, word began to spread beyond the hospital walls, not through official channels or press releases, but through the staff members who were witnessing something extraordinary. Nurses called their families during breaks, sharing stories of the prince who had spent an hour playing board games with patients, and the duchess who had listened with rapt attention as a young boy explained his theory about how laughter could cure illness. Dr. Hartwell's assistant, trying to stay on schedule, approached the royal couple multiple times to suggest they move to the next ward. Each time, William and Catherine politely requested just a few more minutes. Those few minutes stretched into hours as they moved from child to child, giving each their full attention. In the adolescent wing, they met Rebecca, a 16-year-old artist who had been in treatment for brain cancer for over a year. Rebecca had lost her ability to speak clearly due to her condition, but she communicated through her artwork with stunning clarity. Her latest piece was a series of portraits showing the same person at different stages of illness and recovery, titled The Many Faces of Hope. Catherine studied each portrait carefully, asking Rebecca about her technique and inspiration. When Rebecca struggled to explain her artistic process, Catherine waited patiently, never rushing or finishing sentences for her. This simple act of respect meant more to Rebecca than any formal recognition could have. William, meanwhile, was engaged in a chess match with 13-year-old David, whose treatment had kept him hospitalized for months. David was winning handily, his strategic thinking unimpaired by his physical condition. "You're quite good at this," William observed as David captured his knight. "I have lots of time to practice," David replied with a grin. "Plus, my dad taught me that every move matters, even when the game looks hopeless. Sometimes the best moves come when you think you're about to lose." William studied the board, recognizing the metaphor in David's words. "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He is," David said, moving his queen into position. "He tells me that life is like chess. Sometimes you have to sacrifice something important to protect something more important. And checkmate, by the way." William looked down at the board in surprise, then began to laugh. "Well played, David." "Very well played indeed." As the day wore on, something began to shift in the hospital's atmosphere. The usual clinical efficiency was replaced by something warmer, more human. Staff members found reasons to linger in the areas where William and Catherine were visiting, drawn not by celebrity fascination but by the genuine connections being formed. Nurse Patricia Williams, who had worked in pediatric oncology for 15 years, later described the day as transformative. "I've seen many VIP visits over the years," she explained to her supervisor. "Usually, it's a brief photo opportunity followed by a quick exit. But this was different. They weren't visiting us. They were joining us, becoming part of our community. Even if just for a day, the most profound moment came near the end of their visit when they entered the room of 5-year-old Oliver, who had been too shy to join the group activities. Oliver had been in the hospital for 3 months, and his treatment had left him weak and withdrawn. His parents had mentioned that he loved stories about knights and dragons but hadn't shown interest in much of anything lately. Catherine approached Oliver's bed slowly, giving him time to adjust to her presence. "Hello, Oliver," she said softly. "I heard you like stories about knights. Would you like to hear one?" Oliver nodded slightly, his eyes remaining fixed on his hands. Catherine began to tell a story she created on the spot about a young knight who discovered that his greatest power wasn't his sword or his armor, but his kind heart. As she spoke, Oliver gradually looked up, drawn in by her gentle voice and the tale of a hero who conquered through compassion rather than conquest. William, watching from the doorway, felt something shift inside him. This wasn't duty or obligation. This was something deeper, more fundamental. These children, facing challenges that would devastate most adults, were teaching him about resilience, hope, and the power of human connection. When Catherine finished her story, Oliver spoke for the first time in days. "Could the knight in your story visit other sick kids too?" he asked quietly. "I think he could," Catherine replied. "In fact, I think that's exactly what he would want to do." Dr. Hartwell, who had been observing from the hallway, later wrote in her notes that she witnessed something that day that changed her understanding of what healing could look like. "Medical treatment addresses the physical aspects of illness," she wrote. "But what I saw today was treatment for the spirit, the hope, the fundamental human need to feel seen and valued." As their visit drew to a close, the children gathered in the main playroom for what was supposed to be a brief goodbye. Instead, it became an impromptu celebration of connection and courage. Emma presented Catherine with another drawing This one showing all the children they had met that day standing together in front of her healing castle. "This is everyone being brave together," Emma explained. "Because sometimes being brave is easier when you're not alone." William addressed the group, his voice carrying the weight of genuine emotion. "Today, you've all taught Catherine and me something very important. You've shown us that being royal isn't about titles or crowns. It's about how you treat others, especially when they need kindness the most. Each of you is more royal than we could ever be." The children applauded, not because protocol demanded it, but because they felt genuinely appreciated and seen. As William and Catherine prepared to leave, something unprecedented happened. Instead of the formal handshakes and curtsies typical of royal departures, the children surrounded them with hugs. Dr. Hartwell later noted that this moment became a turning point for many of the young patients. "Something shifted that day," she observed. The children began referring to themselves differently. Instead of calling themselves patients or sick kids, they started using phrases like brave knights and healing heroes. Their self-perception changed, and with it, their approach to treatment. As their car pulled away from the hospital, Catherine held Emma's drawings in her lap, while William stared thoughtfully out the window. Neither spoke for several minutes, both processing what they had experienced. "That wasn't what I expected," William finally said. Catherine nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. "They gave us so much more than we gave them." "Did you see the way Emma's face lit up when we asked about sharing her story?" William continued. "And David's chess strategy metaphors? These children have wisdom that most adults never develop. It's because they're living with such intensity," Catherine observed. "Every day is precious to them in a way that healthy people often don't understand. They can't afford to waste time on things that don't matter." As they drove through London's busy streets, both William and Catherine knew that something fundamental had changed. This visit had started as a charitable obligation, but had become a profound personal experience that would influence how they approached their roles, their family, and their understanding of what truly mattered in life. The following evening, Catherine sat in her private study at Kensington Palace, Emma's drawings spread across the mahogany desk that had once belonged to Princess Diana. The lamp cast a warm glow over the colorful sketches, each one telling part of a story that had touched her more deeply than any state dinner or diplomatic meeting ever could. William entered quietly, carrying 2 cups of tea, a nightly ritual they had maintained throughout their marriage. He settled into the leather chair beside her desk, noting how she continued to study the drawings with the same intensity she usually reserved for briefing documents about international affairs. "I can't stop thinking about what Emma said," Catherine murmured, tracing the outline of the healing castle with her finger, "about how being brave doesn't mean you're not afraid." William sipped his tea thoughtfully. "She's 8 years old and facing something that would terrify most adults, yet she's comforting us with her wisdom. There's something profound about that innocence paired with such understanding." Catherine picked up her phone and scrolled through the messages that had been flooding in since news of their hospital visit had spread. Unlike typical royal coverage, these messages weren't from tabloids seeking scandalous stories or critics analyzing their fashion choices. These were from parents, medical professionals, and patients themselves, sharing their own stories of courage and resilience. "Look at this," Catherine said, holding her phone toward William. "A mother in Manchester wrote that her daughter saw a photo from our visit and asked if she could draw her own healing castle. A father in Scotland says his son, who hasn't spoken much since starting chemotherapy, spent an hour today telling his siblings about the prince who played chess with sick kids." William leaned forward, reading over her shoulder. "This one's from a nurse in Birmingham. She says 3 of her young patients asked if they could write letters to Emma, wanting to share their own brave stories." Catherine set down her phone and looked directly at her husband. "William, what if this doesn't end here? What if yesterday was just the beginning of something bigger?" "What do you mean?" Catherine stood and walked to the window overlooking the palace gardens, where the last rays of sunlight were painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. "I mean, what if we created something lasting? What if Emma's healing castle became more than just a drawing?" William joined her at the window, sensing the energy in her voice that he had learned to recognize as the beginning of one of her passionate projects. "Tell me what you're thinking." "I'm thinking about all those children we met yesterday. Marcus with his superhero powers, David with his chess wisdom, Rebecca with her portraits of hope. Each of them has something valuable to share with other children facing similar challenges. What if we created a platform for them to do that? Catherine turned to face him, her eyes bright with possibility. What if we established a program that connects children in hospitals across the country? Not just for visits, but for ongoing relationships. Emma could share her healing castle concept with other young artists. David could teach chess strategies to kids who have hours to fill during treatment. Marcus could help other children discover their own superhero powers. William could feel his own excitement building as he understood the scope of what she was envisioning. A network of young mentors and friends, all of them dealing with serious health challenges, but supporting each other through creativity and connection. Exactly, Catherine said, returning to her desk and pulling out a notebook. We could call it the Healing Heroes Network. Children who are going through treatment could connect with others who understand their experience. They could share art, stories, games, and most importantly, hope. As Catherine began sketching ideas in her notebook, William found himself thinking about the practical implications. We'd need partnership with hospitals, technology platforms for communication, oversight to ensure safety and appropriateness. All manageable, Catherine replied, her pen moving quickly across the page. Dr. Hartwell mentioned that Great Ormond Street has been looking for innovative ways to support their patients' emotional and social needs. Other hospitals would likely welcome similar programs. William picked up Emma's drawing of the healing castle and studied it with new eyes. You know, she designed this with different towers for different kinds of healing. What if we actually built something like this? Not a physical castle, but a virtual one where children could visit different rooms for different types of support. Catherine looked up from her notes, intrigued. Explain that. Well, think about it. Emma's castle has a storytelling tower, an art room, a place for games and laughter. We could create a digital platform with similar spaces. Children could upload their artwork to a virtual gallery, participate in online storytelling sessions, play games with other kids in treatment. And each space could be overseen by child mentors like Emma and David, Catherine added, warming to the idea. Children helping children, with medical staff and our team providing guidance and support. They spent the next 2 hours developing their concept, filling page after page with ideas, connections, and possibilities. By the time they finished, they had outlined a comprehensive program that could transform the experience of childhood illness from isolation to community. The next morning, Catherine called Dr. Hartwell to discuss their ideas. The conversation that was supposed to last 15 minutes stretched to nearly 2 hours as the physician shared her own observations about the transformative effect their visit had on her patients. Emma asked her mother this morning if she could write a book about her healing castle, Dr. Che-Jewel, Hartwell reported. She wants to share it with other children so they won't feel so alone. 3 other patients have asked if they can contribute chapters about their own recovery journeys. Catherine felt her heart swell with emotion. Dr. Hartwell, would you be willing to partner with us on something larger? Something that could connect Emma and your other patients with children in hospitals across the country. When Catherine finished explaining their vision for the Healing Heroes Network, Dr. Hartwell was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she spoke with the measured tone of someone trying to contain her excitement. Your Royal Highness, what you're describing could revolutionize pediatric care. Not just the medical treatment, but the entire experience of childhood illness. That's exactly what we're hoping, Catherine replied. But we want to make sure we're approaching this correctly. The children must remain at the center of everything we do. This has to be about them, for them, and ultimately led by them. Dr. Copay the dictionary, approaching the protest itself. Hartwell agreed to arrange a meeting with hospital administrators and child psychology specialists to explore the feasibility of the program. She also suggested involving some of the patients themselves in the planning process, recognizing that their insights would be invaluable. Meanwhile, William reached out to technology experts within their network of charitable contacts to explore the digital platform possibilities. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Within days, they had offers from software developers, digital security specialists, and child-focused technology companies, all wanting to contribute to the project. One of the most significant offers came from James Morrison, a software executive whose own daughter had spent months in pediatric cancer treatment 5 years earlier. Your Royal Highnesses, he wrote in his email. My company would be honored to develop this platform at no cost. My daughter often spoke about how lonely hospital stays could be, despite being surrounded by caring medical staff. What you're proposing could have made an enormous difference in her experience. As word of their developing project began to spread through their professional networks, Catherine and William found themselves fielding calls from unexpected sources. Child psychologists offered research support. Artists volunteered to help design the virtual spaces. Former pediatric patients, now adults, reached out to share their experiences and offer guidance. The momentum was building faster than they had anticipated, but it was Emma's mother, Sarah Thompson, who provided the reality check they needed. She called Catherine 3 days after the hospital visit, with a question that cut to the heart of their ambitions. "Your Royal Highness," Sarah said during their phone conversation, "Emma is thrilled about the possibility of helping other children through her drawings and stories. But I need to ask directly, how do we ensure that this program doesn't become another burden for children who are already carrying so much?" It was exactly the right question, and Catherine appreciated Sarah's protective maternal instinct. "Sarah, that's precisely why we need parents like you involved in every step of this process. The moment this feels like work or obligation rather than joy and connection, we've lost the essence of what made our hospital visit so special." Sarah's relief was audible. "I hoped you'd say that. Emma's been drawing every day since you visited, creating new characters for her healing castle. Yesterday, she drew a superhero named Captain Checkers, inspired by your chess game with David. But she does it because she wants to, not because she feels she has to. That's the spirit we want to preserve," Catherine assured her. "Would you be willing to help us establish guidelines to protect that natural enthusiasm while still creating opportunities for connection?" Sarah agreed immediately, and Catherine realized they had found their first parent advisor. Over the following weeks, Sarah became instrumental in helping them understand the delicate balance required to support children without overwhelming them. The project took another significant step forward when William received a call from his brother Harry, who was calling from California, where he had been working on his own mental health initiatives.
"I heard through the Palace Network about your hospital project," Harry said, his voice warm with brotherly pride.
"It sounds like you and Catherine have stumbled onto something really important." William appreciated his brother's support, but he was even more interested in Harry's expertise. "Actually, Harry, we could use your insight. You've been working extensively on mental health programs. How do we ensure we're supporting these children's emotional well-being without overstepping into areas where we lack professional training?" Harry's response was thoughtful and practical. "The key is partnership, not leadership. You create the platform and the connections, but you let qualified professionals guide the therapeutic aspects. Your role is to facilitate and inspire, not to counsel or treat." This conversation led to another crucial development. Harry offered to connect them with Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a specialist in childhood trauma and resilience who had been working with his mental health foundation. Dr. Martinez had developed innovative approaches to helping children process difficult experiences through creative expression and peer support. When Catherine and William met with Dr. Martinez via video conference, they immediately understood why Harry had recommended her. She listened to their vision with the practiced attention of someone who had spent years working with vulnerable children, asking probing questions that helped refine their approach. "What I find most promising about your concept," Dr. Martinez observed, "is that it's built on authentic connections rather than artificial programs. Children have an extraordinary ability to support each other when given appropriate frameworks and safety measures." Dr. Martinez agreed to serve as their chief psychological advisor, helping them develop protocols that would protect the children's well-being while maximizing the benefits of peer support. She also introduced them to research showing that children who felt empowered to help others during their own treatment often experienced better outcomes across multiple measures. As their team of advisors grew, Catherine and William realized they needed to establish formal organizational structure. This led to the creation of the Healing Heroes Foundation, with Emma's Healing Castle as its logo and her wisdom about courage as its guiding philosophy. The foundation's first board meeting was unlike any corporate gathering either William or Catherine had ever attended. The boardroom at Kensington Palace was filled with an unusual mix of pediatric specialists, technology experts, former patients, parents, and child advocates. At the center of the table sat a framed copy of Emma's original Healing Castle drawing, serving as a reminder of the inspiration behind everything they were building. Dr. Hartwell opened the meeting by sharing updates from Great Ormond Street. Since your visit, we've seen remarkable changes in our patients' attitudes and engagement. Emma has become an informal leader among the children, helping newcomers feel welcome and sharing her artistic techniques. David has started a chess club that meets twice a week, teaching strategy to other patients and even some staff members. Sarah Thompson, attending as the parent representative, added her observations. Emma talks about the foundation constantly, but always in terms of how she can help other children feel less scared. She's not focused on her own illness anymore. She's focused on her mission. It's given her a sense of purpose that has been transformative. James Morrison presented the technology framework they had developed, showing mock-ups of the virtual healing castle that brought Emma's drawings to life. The digital castle had towers for different activities, an art gallery where children could share their creative work, a storytelling chamber for sharing experiences and advice, a games room for interactive play, and a quiet garden for reflection and private conversations. We've built in extensive safety features, Morrison explained. All interactions are monitored by trained staff, and we've created age-appropriate spaces to ensure children connect with peers facing similar challenges. Dr. Martinez outlined the psychological support framework that would undergird all platform activities. Each child will have a dedicated advocate, either a medical professional or trained volunteer, who helps them navigate the platform and ensures their participation remains positive and beneficial. As the meeting progressed, Catherine found herself reflecting on how far they had come from that initial hospital visit. What had begun as a single afternoon spent with 23 children had evolved into a comprehensive support network that could potentially help thousands of young patients across the country. William raised a crucial question that had been on his mind. How do we measure success? How will we know if we're truly making a difference in these children's lives? Dr. Martinez responded thoughtfully. Traditional metrics focus on medical outcomes, but what we're building addresses different needs. We should measure connections formed, creative works shared, peer support provided, and most importantly, the children's own assessments of how the program affects their hospital experience. Sarah Thompson added, Emma would say we're successful if other children feel less alone and more brave. That's her definition of success, and I think it should be ours too. The meeting concluded with unanimous approval to launch a pilot program involving 5 hospitals across England. Great Ormond Street would serve as the flagship location, with Emma, David, Rebecca, and other young pioneers serving as the first peer mentors. As the board members filed out of the palace, Catherine lingered in the boardroom, once again studying Emma's drawing. The little girl's vision of a place where sick children could find healing, connection, and hope was becoming reality. But more than that, Emma herself was becoming the leader she had drawn in her pictures, the princess who helped others feel less scared. That evening, Catherine called Emma to share the news about the foundation's launch. Emma's excitement was infectious, but her questions revealed the wisdom that had originally inspired the entire project. Will the other children really want to share their stories? Emma asked. Sometimes when I'm having a bad day with my treatment, I don't feel like talking to anyone. Catherine smiled at the question, recognizing Emma's intuitive understanding of the challenges they faced. That's exactly why this will work, Emma. You understand that some days are harder than others. You'll be able to help other children know that it's okay to have quiet days, and that the healing castle will be there waiting when they're ready to connect again. Good, Emma replied with satisfaction. Because being brave doesn't mean you always feel strong. Sometimes being brave means knowing it's okay to rest until you feel strong again. Once again, an 8-year-old girl had articulated a profound truth that would guide everything they were building. As Catherine ended the call, she realized that their foundation wasn't just creating a support network for sick children. They were creating a new model for how wisdom, compassion, and leadership could emerge from the most unexpected places, transforming not just individual lives but entire communities of care. 2 months after the Foundation's board meeting, the pilot program was ready for launch. The virtual healing castle had been built and tested, complete with all the safety protocols and support systems Dr. Martinez had recommended. 5 hospitals across England had signed partnership agreements, and 25 children had volunteered to serve as founding members of the Healing Heroes Network. Catherine stood in the newly established Foundation office in central London, watching as technicians made final adjustments to the video conferencing equipment that would connect children across the country. The space itself reflected Emma's original vision: bright, welcoming, with artwork created by young patients covering the walls and comfortable seating areas designed to feel more like a living room than a corporate office. William was at Great Ormond Street Hospital, where Emma and several other children were preparing for the network's inaugural session. The plan was simple. Each participating hospital would have children gathered in their playrooms, connected via video to create a virtual meeting space where young patients could introduce themselves and share their stories. At precisely 3 o'clock that afternoon, screens across 5 hospitals flickered to life, revealing groups of children waving excitedly at each other from their respective locations. Emma, wearing a crown made of construction paper and wearing a t-shirt that read Princess Emma's Castle, stepped forward to address her new network of friends. "Hi, everyone," Emma said with the confidence of someone much older than her 8 years. "I'm Emma, and I drew the healing castle that helped create this network. I want everyone to know that this is a safe place where we can share our stories, help each other feel less scared, and remember that being brave doesn't mean we're never afraid." The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Children from hospitals in Manchester, Birmingham, Bristol, and Leeds began introducing themselves, sharing not just their names and ages but their special talents and interests. Marcus, the 6-year-old with superhero powers, demonstrated his invisible pose. David set up a chessboard and challenged anyone who wanted to learn. Rebecca showed her latest artwork, a portrait series titled Faces of Friendship. Catherine watched from the foundation office, connected via a discrete video feed that allowed her to observe without intruding. What she saw exceeded her most optimistic expectations. Within minutes of the session beginning, the children were laughing, sharing stories, and forming connections that transcended their physical separation. A 9-year-old named Sophie from Manchester, who had been receiving treatment for a rare genetic condition, shyly showed a collection of handmade jewelry she had created during her hospital stays. "I make these for the nurses who take extra good care of me," she explained. "Would anyone like me to teach you how to make them?" The response was immediate. Children from multiple hospitals raised their hands, eager to learn Sophie's techniques. Emma suggested that jewelry making could become one of the regular activities in the castle's craft tower, and Sophie beamed with pride at the recognition of her skills. But it was 10-year-old Michael from Bristol who provided the day's most profound moment. Michael had been dealing with a severe form of juvenile arthritis that had required multiple surgeries and ongoing treatment. He spoke quietly, but his words carried the weight of hard-won wisdom. "I used to think being sick made me different from other kids," Michael said, looking directly into the camera. "But now I realize that everyone has something they're dealing with. The difference is that our stuff is more visible. But that also means we can help each other in ways that healthy kids might not understand." The silence that followed Michael's words wasn't uncomfortable but respectful, as 24 other children processed the truth of what he had shared. Finally, Emma spoke up. "Michael's right," she said. "We understand things about being scared and being brave that other people our age might not know yet. That makes us special helpers for each other." William, watching from the Great Ormond Street playroom, felt his throat tighten with emotion. These children, who had every reason to focus on their own challenges, were instead thinking about how they could support others. Their capacity for empathy and generosity, despite their circumstances, humbled him completely. The session continued for 2 hours, far longer than originally planned, but none of the children showed any signs of fatigue or boredom. They formed smaller groups to work on different projects: Sophie's jewelry-making tutorial, David's chess lessons, a storytelling circle led by a 12-year-old named Grace, who had created an entire fantasy world during her months of treatment. As the session wound down, the children began making plans for their next meeting. Emma suggested they create a collaborative art project where each hospital would contribute one panel of a large mural depicting their collective healing castle. David proposed a network-wide chess tournament with divisions based on skill level rather than age. Rebecca offered to help other children develop their artistic skills through online tutorials. Dr. Episode 8. Hartwell, who had been observing from the sidelines, approached William as the children began to disconnect from the video session. "Your Royal Highness, I've been working in pediatric medicine for over 20 years, and I've never seen anything like what just happened." Those children weren't participating in a program. They were leading a movement. William nodded, still processing what he had witnessed. They've created something we couldn't have designed or anticipated. They've built their own community of support, with their own culture and values. The success of the inaugural session led to immediate requests for expansion. Hospitals across Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland reached out, asking to join the network. Pediatric facilities in other countries began inquiring about establishing international connections. Within weeks, the modest pilot program was facing the challenge of managing unprecedented demand. Catherine convened an emergency meeting with the Foundation Board to address the rapid growth. The original plan had been to slowly expand over the course of 2 years, adding hospitals gradually to ensure quality control and adequate support for each new location. Now they were facing requests that could multiply their network by 10 times within months. "We're victim of our own success," Catherine observed during the meeting. "But we have to be careful not to lose the intimate personal quality that makes this program special." Dr. Martinez agreed, expressing concerns about maintaining the safety and psychological support standards they had established. Rapid expansion could dilute the peer mentorship model that's working so effectively. "We need Emma, David, and our other founding heroes to help guide any growth." Sarah Thompson, representing the parent perspective, raised practical concerns. "These children are volunteers, not employees. We can't expect Emma to manage connections with hundreds of other children while she's still managing her own treatment." The solution came from an unexpected source. During their next network session, Emma herself addressed the expansion question when she noticed several new faces on the video screens. "I'm excited that more kids want to join our healing castle," Emma said to the group. "But I think we need to be smart about how we grow. Maybe we should train some of our friends to become castle leaders for new groups, so everyone gets the attention they need." David, now 11 and increasingly confident in his leadership role, expanded on Emma's idea. "We could create a mentorship chain. The original group trains new leaders, and they help start new castle groups. That way, every new child has someone who understands what they're going through." The children's solution was more sophisticated than anything the adult advisors had proposed. They instinctively understood the need for manageable group sizes, peer leadership, and gradual integration of new members. Over the following weeks, they worked with the foundation staff to develop a structured growth model that preserved the intimate connections while allowing for expansion. The first daughter castle was established at Birmingham Children's Hospital, with Rebecca serving as the mentor to a new group of 8 children. Rebecca had grown tremendously in confidence since joining the network, and her artistic talents had flourished as she shared techniques with other creative children. "I never thought I could be a teacher," Rebecca told Catherine during a follow-up call. "But helping other kids discover their artistic voices has made me realize I'm good at explaining things and encouraging people. Maybe I want to be an art teacher when I grow up." Catherine smiled at the career aspiration, recognizing how the network was not just helping children cope with illness, but helping them envision healthy futures. "Rebecca, you're already an excellent teacher. You're just getting started." The ripple effects of the network extended far beyond the participating children. Medical staff at participating hospitals reported improved morale among patients, increased engagement with treatment protocols, and better emotional resilience during difficult procedures. Parents noted that their children were more positive about hospital visits and more willing to discuss their feelings about their conditions. Dr. James Fletcher, Chief of Pediatric Oncology at Manchester Children's Hospital, documented the changes he observed in a report that would later influence pediatric care protocols across the UK. "Since joining the Healing Heroes Network, our young patients demonstrate measurably improved psychological adjustment to their medical situations," Dr. Fletcher wrote. "More significantly, they have developed a sense of agency and purpose that extends beyond their individual treatment journey. They see themselves as helpers and leaders, not just patients." The network's success attracted attention from unexpected quarters. Medical schools began incorporating case studies of the Healing Heroes model into their curriculum, recognizing its potential for transforming patient care. Child psychology programs started developing research projects to better understand how peer support networks could be optimized for various age groups and conditions. But it was the children themselves who provided the most compelling evidence of the network's impact. 3 months after the network's launch, Emma's mother, Sarah, shared an observation that captured the transformation she had witnessed in her daughter. Emma used to talk about her illness as something that was happening to her, Sarah explained during a parent support meeting. Now she talks about her treatment as something she's managing while she helps other children. The illness is still there, but it's no longer the center of her identity. She's Emma the helper, Emma the artist, Emma the castle princess. The cancer is just one part of her story, not the whole story. William and Catherine heard similar reports from parents across the network. Children were sleeping better, engaging more actively with their families, and approaching their medical treatments with improved cooperation and resilience. The network hadn't eliminated the challenges of childhood illness, but it had transformed how children experienced those challenges. The program's success led to recognition that neither William nor Catherine had sought, but that brought important benefits. The Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health awarded the foundation its Innovation in Child Care Award. The International Association of Children's Hospitals designated the Healing Heroes model as a best practice for pediatric psychosocial support. More importantly, the recognition brought funding opportunities that allowed the foundation to hire additional staff and expand their technology infrastructure. Corporate sponsors began offering support, drawn not just by the royal connection but by the documented impact of the program. However, it was a letter from an unexpected source that had the greatest impact on both William and Catherine. The letter arrived on palace stationery, but it wasn't from any government official or fellow member of the royal family. It was from Queen Elizabeth II herself. "My dear William and Catherine," the letter began, written in the Queen's distinctive handwriting. "I have been following the development of your Healing Heroes Foundation with great interest and pride. What you have created goes to the heart of what royal service should be, identifying genuine need and developing innovative solutions that make a real difference in people's lives." The letter continued with specific observations about the program that made it clear the Queen had been following their progress closely. "Young Emma and her fellow castle leaders are demonstrating the kind of leadership that our country needs. Leadership rooted in empathy, wisdom, and genuine care for others. They are, in their own way, fulfilling the highest ideals of public service." The Queen's endorsement meant more to both William and Catherine than any other recognition they could have received, but the letter's conclusion revealed something even more significant. "I would like to invite Emma and several of her fellow healing heroes to tea at Buckingham Palace," the Queen wrote. "I believe we could all learn something from these remarkable young people about courage, service, and the true meaning of nobility." When Catherine called to share the invitation with Emma's family, the 8-year-old's response was characteristically thoughtful. "Will the Queen want to hear about our healing castle?" Emma asked, "because I have lots of ideas for how we could help even more children feel less scared." Catherine laughed, recognizing that Emma was approaching tea with the Queen the same way she approached everything else, as an opportunity to advocate for other children in need. "Emma, I think the Queen will be very interested in hearing all of your ideas." As plans for the royal tea developed, Catherine realized that their simple hospital visit had created something far beyond their original intentions. They had not just built a support network for sick children, they had created a new model of leadership development, where wisdom and compassion could emerge from the most challenging circumstances. The healing castle that Emma had first drawn during a difficult hospital stay had become a real place where children found strength, friendship, and purpose. But more than that, it had become a proving ground, where young people facing extraordinary challenges were developing the skills and values that would serve them throughout their lives. Looking ahead, Catherine could see endless possibilities for growth and impact, but she also understood that the network's strength lay not in its size or recognition, but in the authentic connections between children who had chosen to transform their own experiences of illness into sources of support for others. Emma's original wisdom remained the guiding principle. Being brave doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you do what needs to be done to help others, even when you're scared. In teaching that lesson to children across the country, Emma and her fellow healing heroes had also taught it to 2 members of the royal family, transforming their understanding of service, leadership, and the true source of nobility. The morning of the royal tea arrived with typical London weather, gray skies threatening rain but with enough breaks in the clouds to suggest the possibility of sunshine. Inside Buckingham Palace, staff members were making final preparations for what many considered the most unusual royal reception in recent memory. Queen Elizabeth II had specifically requested that the tea be held in the blue drawing room, a more intimate space than the grand staterooms typically used for official functions. She had also personally reviewed the menu, ensuring it included items that would appeal to children while maintaining the dignity appropriate for the occasion. Emma Thompson, now 9 years old and having completed her chemotherapy treatment successfully, stood with her parents in the palace's grand entrance. She wore a blue dress that matched the color of her healing castle drawings, and she carried a special portfolio containing artwork from children across the Healing Heroes network. Beside her stood David Martinez, now 12 and cancer-free for 8 months. David had brought his chess set, hoping for the opportunity to teach the Queen some of the strategic principles he had learned during his treatment. Rebecca Williams, 13, and preparing to return to regular school after 2 years of intermittent hospital stays, clutched a bound collection of portraits she had painted of her fellow network members. 5 other children who had become leaders within the network completed the group. Each had been selected not just for their recovery progress, but for their ongoing commitment to supporting newer members of the Healing Castle community. William and Catherine arrived at the palace feeling a mixture of pride and nervousness. This was their first time presenting their foundation's work directly to the Queen, and they knew that the children's voices would be far more powerful than any formal presentation they could have prepared. "Remember," Catherine whispered to Emma as they were led through the palace corridors, "just be yourself. The Queen wants to hear your ideas, not what you think she wants to hear." Emma nodded seriously. "I know. I've been thinking about what I want to tell her about the castle. I think she'll understand about helping people who are scared." When they entered the blue drawing room, Queen Elizabeth II was already seated in her preferred chair, wearing a soft lavender dress with her signature pearls. Despite the formal setting, her expression was warm and genuinely curious as she rose to greet her young guests. "Emma," the Queen said, extending her hand to the little girl who had inspired everything that followed, "I've been looking forward to meeting the architect of the Healing Castle. I understand you've been quite busy helping other children." Emma curtsied as her mother had taught her, then looked directly at the Queen with the confidence that had become her trademark. "Your Majesty, thank you for inviting us. I brought some drawings from children all over England who wanted you to see their ideas for helping sick kids feel less alone." The Queen's eyes sparkled with genuine delight. "I would very much like to see those drawings, Emma. But first, please, all of you, sit down and tell me how you came to create this remarkable network." As the children settled into chairs arranged in a semicircle, palace staff served tea and delicate sandwiches cut into shapes that would appeal to young guests. The atmosphere quickly became less formal as the Queen leaned forward, clearly interested in hearing their stories. David spoke first, describing how his chess games during treatment had evolved into a way of teaching strategic thinking to other children facing medical challenges. "Your Majesty, when you're in the hospital, you learn that every decision matters, just like in chess. We teach new kids that they have more control over their situation than they think." Rebecca shared how creating portraits of her fellow patients had helped her process her own emotions while providing comfort to others. When kids see themselves painted as strong and beautiful, even when they're bald from treatment or using medical equipment, it changes how they see themselves. The Queen listened intently to each child, asking thoughtful questions that demonstrated she had been following their network's development closely. When Emma finally opened her portfolio and began sharing artwork from children across the country, the Queen studied each piece with the attention usually reserved for reviewing state documents. "This drawing is from a 6-year-old named Tommy in Scotland," Emma explained, showing a colorful sketch of children holding hands around a castle. "He says the best part of being in our network is knowing that other kids understand why he gets scared sometimes, and that being scared doesn't make him weak." The Queen nodded approvingly. "Tommy is quite wise for someone so young. Fear is a natural response to difficult situations. The courage lies in not allowing fear to prevent us from doing what needs to be done." Catherine watched the interaction with growing amazement. The Queen was engaging with these children as equals, recognizing their wisdom and treating their insights with the same respect she would show to adult advisors. "Your Majesty," Emma said, setting aside the portfolio, "I wanted to ask you something. You've been helping people your whole life, right? Do you ever get scared about whether you're doing enough?" The question caught everyone in the room off guard. Even William and Catherine exchanged surprised glances, wondering how the Queen would respond to such a direct and personal inquiry from a 9-year-old. The Queen considered the question carefully before answering. Emma, that's a very thoughtful question. Yes, I do sometimes wonder if I'm doing enough, if I'm helping in the right ways. But I've learned that the answer isn't to try to help everyone at once. The answer is to help the people in front of you as well as you possibly can, and to trust that those efforts will spread outward in ways you might never see. Emma nodded as if this made perfect sense to her. That's exactly what we do in the Healing Castle. We help each other, and then we help new kids, and they help other new kids. It keeps growing because everyone passes on the help they received. Precisely, the Queen replied with a smile. You've discovered one of the fundamental principles of effective service, that the best way to create lasting change is to empower others to become helpers themselves. The conversation continued for over 2 hours, far longer than originally scheduled. The children shared stories of network members who had overcome significant challenges, innovations they had developed for supporting newer patients, and their dreams for expanding the program internationally. David described their recent chess tournament that had included children from 15 hospitals across the UK. We had kids who could barely hold the pieces playing against kids who had been studying chess for years. But everyone helped everyone, and the winners were determined by improvement, not just final scores. Rebecca showed photographs of a virtual art exhibition where children had displayed their creative works alongside explanations of how art had helped them cope with their medical treatments. Kids from hospitals we'd never visited were asking if they could contribute pieces. Art became a universal language for sharing hope. But it was Marcus, now 8 and 2 years cancer-free, who provided the moment that would stay with the Queen long after the tea ended. Marcus had become known within the network for his superhero personas, which he used to help younger children find courage during frightening procedures. Your Majesty, Marcus said with the seriousness of someone sharing state secrets, I want to tell you the most important thing I learned from being sick. Being a superhero isn't about having powers that other people don't have. It's about using whatever powers you do have to help people who need help. The Queen looked at Marcus with the expression reserved for profound insights. Marcus, that might be the wisest definition of heroism I've ever heard. And I've heard quite a few definitions over the years. Marcus beamed with pride, then continued. Emma taught me that. She said everyone has some kind of superpower, even if it doesn't look like the ones in comic books. Emma's superpower is helping scared kids feel brave. David's is teaching people to think strategically about problems. Rebecca's is showing people how to express their feelings through art. And what's your superpower? The Queen asked. I help little kids realize they already have superpowers too, Marcus replied matter-of-factly. They just need someone to help them figure out what their powers are. William felt his eyes filling with tears as he listened to Marcus articulate a philosophy of empowerment that many adult leaders never achieve. These children, forged by experiences that would have devastated many adults, had developed wisdom that transcended their years. As the tea drew to a close, the Queen made an announcement that surprised everyone present. I would like to propose something, she said, addressing the children directly. I believe the Healing Castle concept has applications beyond hospitals. Would you be interested in helping develop a program for children facing other kinds of difficult situations, perhaps those dealing with family problems, bullying, or other challenges that make them feel scared and alone? Emma's eyes widened with excitement. You mean like a healing castle for any kind of hurt, not just medical hurt? Exactly, the Queen confirmed. I believe you young people have developed skills and insights that could help many children who are struggling with different kinds of difficulties. The children immediately began discussing possibilities with the enthusiasm that had characterized all their network activities. They talked about adapting their peer support model for children in foster care, kids dealing with family divorces, students struggling with bullying, and young people facing academic or social challenges. We could train teenage helpers to work with younger kids, David suggested. Kids who have overcome challenges could help kids who are just starting to face similar problems. Rebecca added, art therapy techniques that work for medical trauma could be adapted for other kinds of emotional healing too. Emma, always thinking about the practical implementation, raised a crucial question. But we'd need to make sure we have grown-ups who know about different kinds of problems helping us. We know about hospital stuff, but we'd need to learn about other kinds of troubles. The Queen nodded approvingly at Emma's insight. That's exactly the kind of careful thinking that makes your current network so successful. any expansion would need proper professional guidance and support. Catherine found herself once again amazed by the children's ability to think systematically about complex social problems. They intuitively understood the need for appropriate expertise while maintaining confidence in their own abilities to provide peer support. As the formal tea concluded, the Queen requested a private moment with Emma. The two walked to the large windows overlooking the palace gardens, speaking quietly while the others gathered their belongings. "Emma," the Queen said, "when I was your age, I had no idea I would spend my life in service to others, but I suspect you already understand that your experiences have prepared you for something important. How do you envision your future?" Emma looked thoughtful, gazing out at the manicured gardens. "I used to think I might be an artist or maybe a teacher, but now I think maybe I want to help create more healing places for kids who are going through hard things. Not just hospitals, but anywhere kids need to feel less alone." The Queen smiled. "That sounds like a wonderful calling, Emma, and I have a feeling you'll find ways to make that vision reality." As the group prepared to leave, the Queen made one final announcement. "I would like to formally recognize the Healing Heroes Network with a special commendation for innovation in youth service. But more importantly, I want you to know that you have renewed my faith in the next generation's capacity for leadership and compassion." The children curtsied and bowed appropriately, but their faces reflected the deep satisfaction of being recognized by someone whose opinion they truly valued. As they walked back through the palace corridors, Emma carried herself with quiet confidence that came from knowing her work was making a real difference in the world. Outside the palace, as photographers captured images of the young heroes with William and Catherine, Sarah Thompson reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this moment. Her daughter, who 18 months earlier had been a frightened 8-year-old facing cancer treatment, was now being recognized by the Queen of England for her leadership in helping other children. But more significant than any royal recognition was the transformation Sarah had witnessed in Emma's sense of purpose and self-worth. The healing castle that had begun as a coping mechanism for a scared little girl had become a source of strength and identity that would likely shape the rest of Emma's life. As their car pulled away from Buckingham Palace, Emma was already planning the next network session, thinking about how to incorporate the Queen's suggestions for expansion while maintaining the intimate, supportive atmosphere that made their castle special. "Mum," Emma said to Sarah, "I think the Queen understands about helping people the same way we do. She knows that the best way to help lots of people is to help a few people really well and then teach them how to help others." Sarah smiled, recognizing that her daughter had just articulated a profound truth about leadership and service that many adults never grasp. The healing castle had indeed created healers, but they were healers who understood that the most powerful medicine was helping others discover their own capacity for strength and compassion. 1 year after the royal tea, the Healing Heroes Network had grown beyond anything William and Catherine could have imagined during that first hospital visit. What had begun with Emma's simple drawing now connected over 800 children across the United Kingdom, with international expansion programs beginning in Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Catherine stood in the Foundation's expanded headquarters, a converted Georgian townhouse in central London that buzzed with activity. The walls were covered with artwork from network members, progress charts showing the program's growth, and photographs of children from dozens of hospitals who had become part of the Healing Castle community. The morning briefing was about to begin, led not by adult staff members, but by Emma Thompson, now 10 years old and serving as the network's first youth director. Emma had completed her cancer treatment successfully and was back in regular school, but she continued to dedicate several hours each week to supporting the Foundation's expansion. "Good morning, everyone," Emma said, addressing the room with the confidence of someone who had grown comfortable speaking to groups much larger than this. Today we're reviewing applications from 12 new hospitals that want to join our network, and we need to discuss how to maintain our support quality while growing this quickly." Seated around the conference table were an unprecedented mix of advisors. Dr. Hartwell represented the medical perspective, having taken a part-time position with the Foundation while maintaining her role at Great Ormond Street. Dr. P. Martinez continued as their chief psychological consultant, now supported by a team of specialists who had developed comprehensive training programs for peer support facilitation. But the most important voices belonged to the young people themselves. David, now 13 and increasingly interested in the strategic aspects of network management, served as the youth operations coordinator. Rebecca, 14 and thriving in her return to regular school, led their creative programs and supervised the virtual art galleries that had become central to many children's healing experiences. Marcus, 9 years old and bursting with energy, had developed an entirely new role that no adult would have thought to create. He served as the Chief Encouragement Officer, working specifically with children who were struggling to engage with the network or who were experiencing setbacks in their treatment. "I've been thinking about something," Emma said, consulting notes written in her careful handwriting. "When hospitals contact us, they usually focus on how many children they want to connect and what their medical needs are. But I think we need to ask different questions first." Catherine, sitting at the side of the room as an observer, leaned forward with interest. Emma's insights had consistently proved more valuable than traditional market research or administrative analysis. "What questions should we be asking?" Hartwell inquired, genuinely curious about Emma's perspective. Emma stood and walked to the whiteboard, picking up a marker with the assurance of someone who had conducted many such presentations. "We should ask, what makes children at your hospital feel most alone? What activities already help your patients feel better? Who are the nurses and staff members that kids trust most? And most importantly, are there children at your hospital who might want to become helpers for other kids?" David nodded approvingly. "Emma's right. We've learned that the hospitals where our network works best are the ones where kids already have some ways to connect with each other. We're not trying to create community from nothing. We're trying to strengthen community that already exists." Rebecca added her perspective from the creative side. "And the art programs that work best are the ones where hospital staff members are already encouraging kids to express themselves. We can teach techniques and provide platforms, but we can't create the basic desire to share feelings through creativity." Dr. Martinez took notes as the young people spoke, recognizing that they were articulating principles that could transform how support networks were established in medical settings. "You're describing a very sophisticated assessment process," she observed. "You're evaluating institutional culture and existing social dynamics before implementing programs." "Exactly," Emma replied, "because the Healing Castle isn't really a program. It's a way of helping kids who want to help other kids do that more effectively." The distinction Emma was making struck Catherine as profoundly important. Traditional charitable programs often imposed external solutions on identified problems. But the Healing Heroes Network was amplifying existing strengths and natural helping impulses that already existed among children facing medical challenges. Marcus raised his hand with the formal politeness he maintained even in these familiar settings. "I want to talk about something else. We're getting lots of applications from hospitals, but I think we also need to think about what happens when kids get better and leave the hospital." It was a question that had been troubling several of the youth leaders. The network had been designed to support children during treatment, but many successful graduates wanted to continue their involvement even after their medical needs were resolved. Emma smiled at Marcus, recognizing his ability to identify issues that adults often overlooked. "Marcus is talking about something really important. When kids finish their treatment, they don't stop caring about other sick kids, but they also need to focus on getting back to their regular lives." David had been thinking about this issue extensively. "I have an idea about this. What if we created a Graduate Heroes program? Kids who have finished treatment could become mentors for children who are just starting, but in a way that doesn't require them to stay connected to hospitals all the time." The idea sparked immediate interest from the adult advisors, but Emma raised a practical concern. "That could work, but we need to be careful. Kids who are trying to get back to normal life shouldn't feel guilty if they want to focus on school and friends instead of helping sick kids." Rebecca nodded in agreement. "And some kids might need time to just be regular kids after spending so much time thinking about medical stuff. We shouldn't make them feel like they have to keep being healing heroes forever." The sensitivity these young people showed toward their peers' varying needs impressed Catherine once again. They understood that recovery involved not just physical healing, but psychological transition back to normal childhood experiences. Dr. Martinez suggested a compromise approach. "What if the Graduate Heroes program was completely voluntary, with very flexible time commitments? Former network members could contribute as much or as little as they wanted, when they wanted." Emma considered this carefully. That could work. And maybe graduates could help in ways that don't require them to talk about being sick all the time, like helping with technology, or organizing fundraising events, or working with families who are just starting treatment. As the meeting continued, Catherine found herself reflecting on the broader implications of what these children had created. They had not just built a support network, they had developed a new model of youth leadership that recognized both the capabilities and the developmental needs of young people facing extraordinary challenges.
The afternoon brought an unexpected visitor.
Sarah Thompson arrived at the foundation offices with news that would change everything once again. Sarah carried a thick folder of documents and wore the expression of someone who had been wrestling with a significant decision. "Emma," Sarah said to her daughter, "I need to discuss something important with you and the foundation team." Emma looked concerned, wondering if her mother had discovered some problem with her network activities or her recovery progress. "I've been contacted by officials from the United Nations Children's Fund," Sarah continued. "They've been following the Healing Heroes Network and they want to discuss expanding the model internationally as part of their global child health initiatives." The room fell silent as everyone processed the magnitude of this opportunity. UNICEF's interest meant potential access to resources and reach that could transform the network from a UK-based program to a global movement. But Emma's first reaction was characteristically practical. "That sounds amazing, but would we be able to keep the network personal?" The Healing Castle works because kids know each other and feel connected. If it gets too big, it might stop feeling like a safe, special place. William, who had been working in another part of the building, joined them just in time to hear Emma's concern. "Emma raises exactly the right question," he said. "Scale is meaningless if it comes at the expense of effectiveness." Hartwell outlined what she had learned from the UNICEF representatives. They're not interested in taking over the program or changing its structure. They want to help establish Healing Castle networks in children's hospitals around the world, each with its own local leadership but connected to share resources and best practices. David's strategic mind immediately began working through the implications. So instead of one giant network, there would be many smaller networks that could collaborate when helpful, but maintain their own identity and culture. "That's exactly what they're proposing," Sarah confirmed. Emma would help train other young people in different countries to become network leaders in their own communities. The prospect excited Emma, but she insisted on understanding the full scope of the commitment. "Would this mean I couldn't focus on helping kids in England anymore? Because I don't want to abandon the friends I've made here." Catherine stepped forward to address Emma's concern. "Emma, you've taught us that the best leaders don't try to do everything themselves. They help other people become leaders too. You could help start networks in other countries while still supporting the kids you work with here." Over the following weeks, the foundation team worked with UNICEF representatives to develop a pilot program that would establish Healing Castle networks in children's hospitals in 3 countries: Australia, where medical systems were similar enough to the UK model to ensure easy adaptation; Kenya, where local artists and storytellers could contribute unique cultural elements, where the network could be integrated with existing community health programs. The selection criteria were carefully designed to ensure success. Each pilot location needed existing pediatric psychology support, hospital staff willing to facilitate peer connections, and most importantly, children who had demonstrated natural leadership tendencies during their own treatment experiences. Emma would travel to each location with Catherine and a team of foundation specialists, spending a week working with local children to establish network leadership and teach the principles that had made the UK program successful. But the actual networks would be developed and led by children in each country, adapted to their own cultural context and medical systems. 3 months later, Emma stood in the children's ward of Royal Melbourne Hospital, teaching a group of young patients how to create their own version of the Healing Castle. The children had already begun adapting her ideas to reflect their Australian context, including native animals in their artwork, and incorporating Aboriginal concepts of healing and community connection. 10-year-old Jasmine, who was receiving treatment for a rare blood disorder, had emerged as the natural leader of the Melbourne group. "Emma," she said, showing her drawing of a healing tree rather than a castle, "we want to connect with your kids in London, but we also want to create something that feels like home to us." Emma studied Jasmine's artwork with the same careful attention she gave to all creative work shared in the network. "Jasmine, that's perfect. The Healing Castle works because it gives kids a way to help each other feel less alone, but it should look and feel right for the kids who use it." The cultural adaptations that emerged in each location enriched the entire global network. Children in Kenya incorporated traditional storytelling methods, creating oral histories of courage and recovery that were shared through recorded videos. Young patients in Colombia developed collaborative mural projects that involved entire families and communities in the healing process. But the fundamental principles remained constant across all locations: children helping children, peer support guided by trained adults, creative expression as a tool for processing difficult experiences, and the understanding that being brave doesn't mean being unafraid. 6 months after the international launch, Emma found herself once again at Buckingham Palace, this time for a formal reception, recognizing the global impact of the Healing Heroes Network. The event brought together children from all the pilot locations via video conference, creating a virtual gathering that spanned 4 continents. The Queen, now fully familiar with Emma's work, opened the reception with words that captured the significance of what had been achieved. What began as one little girl's way of coping with fear has become a worldwide movement that is transforming how we support children facing medical challenges. But perhaps more importantly, it has demonstrated that wisdom and leadership can emerge from the most unexpected places. Emma, now 11 and increasingly comfortable with public speaking, addressed the global gathering with poise that belied her age. "Your Majesty and friends around the world, the Healing Castle started because I was scared, and I drew a picture of a place where scared kids could feel safe. Now there are hundreds of healing castles, and healing trees, and healing gardens where children support each other." She paused, looking directly into the camera that connected her to children across 4 continents. "But the most important thing I want everyone to know is that you don't have to be sick to be a healing hero. You just have to care about helping other people feel less alone. Every kid has the ability to help other kids feel braver." Catherine, watching from the audience, felt tears streaming down her face as she realized the full scope of what had grown.